Lunchtime conversation today. Wow, you are in for a treat. Marnie, I am so excited to do this particular webinar here in the month of April, because I think we need to start planning what's next. So just so you all know, this event will be recorded and offered on YouTube at our YouTube channel. And that link is right there on the slide. We welcome you, and we're so glad that you are here joining us today. I want to let you know that I'm just thrilled to be talking about the role of technology in education as we move forward. Marnie, how are you feeling about all this blended, hybrid, do all of this and none of that and all that good stuff?
Well, I feel like I've kind of gotten the hang of things a bit, but I really like this topic, the role of technology, as we move forward. So what can we take, what lessons have we learned that we can take moving forward? Not just we went through this, now go back to how things were.
And how wonderful, because we have today an incredible doctoral, not only someone who knows a lot about doctoral education, but has researched this topic. So I'm really thrilled. And what's so interesting is he researched it a while back, before Zoom was even a thing. Dr. Eric Peterson was Zooming with the best of them. So I'm really excited to introduce to you all our expert today. Before we do that, I want to let you know that we are Grand Canyon's Canyon Professional Development out of Grand Canyon University. And we are PD with purpose. Canyon Professional Development, we don't do anything lightly. We have a purpose behind everything that we bring to you. And hopefully today's webinar will show you that. We have an incredible team. We are still online, and we wouldn't be able to do this without our entire team. So a huge shout out to the team at Canyon Professional Development here at GCU. Just to let you know, I'm your MC for the day. My name is Corey Araza. I'm the K-12 STEM Outreach Director. I have 17 years in the classroom in computer systems, ESL Spanish, and STEM integration at a public high school in Arizona. So really looking forward to connecting with you. I'm at C. Araza on Twitter. And Marnie is also here with me today. But without further ado, I would love to introduce to you Dr. Eric Peterson. Dr. Peterson, would you mind introducing yourself so we know a little bit about your background?
Of course, happy to. I have worked in doctoral education for just shy of 2 decades. Prior to entering higher education, I worked at a public high school here in Arizona. Was at Metro Tech High School in the Phoenix Union, and taught for a year, and not gone to school intending to work in K-12 education, but had kind of fallen into that from a substitute situation that became a contracted position for a year. So had a great appreciation for what teachers engage in and day out, and a lot of the challenges that are really not transparent to those who are outside of K-12 education. So as I entered higher education and really found a great niche there, I've been able to help support educators throughout roughly the last 2 decades as those who wanted to pursue a doctoral degree.
Fantastic. And I know you have so much connection to the K-12 world, your family and your experience. And we appreciate so much that you work with K-12 teachers to take them to that next level of their own education. So I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about your own research and what research has shown you in this last pandemic teaching world. With that stated, would you set our stage for learning today, Dr. Peterson?
Absolutely. And the quote that I've selected here is, "No significant learning occurs without a significant relationship," James Comer's quote. So the context there is that your students want to hear from you. They don't want to hear from an expert. They want to hear from their teacher, They have that connection to you in the classroom, whether it's at a distance or in hybrid or face-to-face. And so finding ways to creatively enhance that connection is only going to further the learning process.
I can't agree more. Relationship seems to be everything, especially today, where we're building relationships not only in person, but also online. So today, folks, I want to let you know that our goal and our objective today is really to cultivate relationship with you as we move forward in this webinar. So our overall goal is to explore the role of technology moving forward, specific to communication and self-reflection. Sounds like relationship to me. Our objectives are to identify how communication is used to build relationships in hybrid settings, communicate efficiently with online assessment strategies, and use self-reflection to enhance your teaching practice. All of this comes from Dr. Eric Peterson. So we're going to jump right in, but don't forget to stick around, evaluate the webinar to earn that PD certificate. And we just look forward to helping you move along your own personal journey. So with that stated, Dr. Peterson, this the 3 R's is it's a theory in education. We often talk about it on our webinars, but what I love about what you've done is you've added this transactional distance. Can you talk to us a little bit about transactional distance and how it relates to the 3R model?
Absolutely. When we look at the 3R model, we look at kind of a continuum of learning and application, and going from memorization leading all the way through creative application of what's learned, and in unique context. So really from acquisition, assimilation, application, and then adaptation, and being able to apply what's learned in a unique environment. That really speaks to the content and the application in the real world. Transactional distance is something that's so important, but as we talk about the relationships, there's a way to measure those relationships. And so as opposed to only assessing formatively or summatively state standardized test or a final or midterm in a class, there's a way to not only look at a grade, but look at a dynamic that's really a psychological distance. That's what transactional distance measures: the distance between a student and their instructor, student and their classmates, and a student and the content that they are dealing with. And so when we look at those together, there's actually an instrument that can be used to uncover something that you can't see. You don't know, especially in a distance setting, how much am I connecting with these students? Are they really connecting with me as their teacher? And moreover, do they feel supported and encouraged by their classmates? Do they hate math? Are they beginning to learn to love it? And those kinds of things obviously are difficult to see, especially in a distance environment. So transactional distance was something that I had used in the midst of my dissertation, looking at Zoom way before everyone had heard of it. I graduated before COVID became a thing. And so I was looking at how can we assess transactional distance as it might be impacted by using video conferences for online doctoral students.
Don't we have experience with that now, Dr. Peterson? I'm sorry to step over you there, but
sure.
Wow, Zoom. So you were Zooming way back when, not having any idea what your research would give to us as we have moved through this pandemic, and now we're in post-pandemic. I don't think video conferencing is going anywhere. Do you?
I only see hybrid and video conferencing and ways to help connect students who are in more remote areas, especially those in some of the most marginalized communities. I have many teachers who educate on the reservation in the Four Corners area, and in places where they're quite remote from some of the resources that other students take for granted. And so being able to really expand the impact of instruction beyond a physical classroom certainly isn't going to lessen in the years to come.
Okay, so it's not going away. So tell us about your communication hotline and why that's so important in an online or hybrid environment.
Absolutely. In the midst of COVID, I was actually teaching on campus at GCU. I was teaching intro psych class for a class of about 95 when COVID hit. And it was actually right around spring break. And all of a sudden, we weren't reuniting on campus. We weren't coming back to tell everybody about how their spring break went. It was collecting their things from the dorms and going home. And so finding a way that I could be available for my students, I leveraged from one of my colleagues who's actually on the East Coast. He teaches at a community college in Maryland, and he had suggested a Zoom office hour. And so I had my regular class time for my students, but many times the context of the class really doesn't lend itself to extended one-on-one kind of conversations to really help clarify a point for a particular student. And so establishing a regular time where I was available, I was there from, say, noon to 2, for example, or from 2 to 4, or whatever the block of time is. Students would be able to text me or chat message me in Zoom. Some students are more comfortable with that. That's the multiple modes aspect. They were also able to just jump into the Zoom, chat with me face-to-face, virtually face-to-face. And in that way, it was a much more informal kind of communication than what the kinds of questions that they would feel like, I don't like to talk out loud. I don't like to ask questions when others are listening. I don't want to be called out as the one who's not getting it. And so having that Zoom office hour, whether you use Zoom, Google Hangouts, whether you use Remind, there are a lot of different formats that can allow for at least a text communication. Or of course, using the video conferencing in Zoom has been remarkable because students are able to get that additional help that they needed. I was already using that time to grade and to do other things where I could pause and answer questions, and it wasn't flooded with 30 or 40 people coming in at the hotline time in my office hour time, but it was significant for those students who chose to leverage that.
Dr. Peterson, what about students who just, they are not coming to your office hours? I think a lot of us teachers, even our administration has provided time to say, okay, we're going to take these hours off of your classroom instruction time and add kind of an office hour. I think this kind of leans into communication and assessment, right? Maybe kids are like, I'm not sure I'm doing all that well, or I don't want to talk to my teacher. Just having that opportunity, just being there, is that enough? Or do you need to reach out and let them know that you're there?
They need to know that you care about them as individuals. And I know that sounds trite, but it's important. And so some of the informal means that we use to learn about our students, not about their ability to solve a quadratic equation, but who their favorite Marvel character is. Did they watch WandaVision or some of the new Marvel movies that have come out, or learning what Harry Potter house they're in? I know even for my daughter, who's a high schooler, and she attends online and has for many years, even pre-COVID, due to some health concerns. That those classes where she said, oh, my teacher, we all got sorted into our Harry Potter house. And then we got moved into groups based on, it was Ravenclaw versus Hufflepuff. She loved that. And there was an extra buy-in. So she felt like her teacher knew who she was as a person, not the totality of as deeply as they might do with a therapist or something, but knowing about some of their likes, their preferences. When that begins to become commonplace and they understand, their teachers taking the quiz and they know what Harry Potter house their teacher's in as well, they're a little more inclined to want to come and engage in those informal communication settings.
Well, and even you being a college professor, many of your college students, okay, they're adults, they're paying for their education, so they're looking for the content. But even they, I imagine you have to build that relationship with. Now, that's a lot of students. Let's jump into our tech tip here. How do you assess and communicate with a lot of students online? I know you have both online and in-person classes, and you've had those for a while. So what are your tips?
Some of the things that have really helped me efficiently address feedback from my students in a way that feels very tailored to the student without exhausting all of my time to come up with 35 separate or 50 separate responses is using TextExpander and using some of these. And there are other options. There's Magical TextExpander for Chrome. And what this basically is a way to have a set block of text. Maybe it's a paragraph. And in this case, for feedback to really make it feel personalized, is to have the time to write out something very complete that says, here's an item that I wanted to share with you on your paper. It's very common to get this mixed up, and I realize why that may happen, but here's the solution, or here's the grammar rule, or here's what it should look like. And taking the time to draft all that out, and that's beautiful, and you now have that saved with 2 or 3 keystrokes, and there's some examples there that Corey has shared with you. You type in 3 letters like HBD, for example, for happy birthday for a student, or your contact information, or any of those regularly appearing points of feedback, but you've provided some more personality to them.
Okay. So this is really, really key, I think, for a lot of teachers, because we feel like, oh gosh, I'd love to be personalized with each one of my students, but I'm 150 students a day if I'm in high school, if I teach high school, and you're teaching college, 2 different formats, and you do this. So let me see how quick and easy it really is. So folks, I've just opened up Magical Text Expansion. It actually is a Chrome extension. If you want to utilize it, here it is. It's called Magical Text Expansion. It used to be called Auto Text Expander. So I'm opening it here, and I actually created this. They add these for you already. So you have a BRB and an HBD, but down here I added my own welcome letter. So what I notice is when I teach online, I have to give a welcome letter to every student, as well I should. But they come in at different times, and sometimes I'm trying to just really be fast. And so I have this great welcome letter, and I have WL. So I'm going to see if Dr. Peterson is telling me the truth here. I'm going to head over to my email. I'm going to send an email to Marnie because she's just entered my class. So there she is, Marnie Landry, and I'm going to put in the subject, welcome. I'm going to spell it right, I hope. And I would put exactly the class in here, like welcome to Spanish or welcome to psychology, whatever I'm teaching. But this is just going to be really, I'm just going to type, whoa, WL, and voila, holy cow, it comes out. That took me no time at all. I can click send, and now Marnie has the welcome letter. All right, you're correct. That was fast. That was super darn fast. So folks, if you're interested in the Magical Text Expansion, that is for Chrome, but there's so many others, because I know, Dr. Peterson, you don't use auto text for Chrome, but you turned me on to this awesome site called AlternativeTo. Can you tell me about this?
So oftentimes we'll hear at a conference, in an in-service, we'll hear something that sounds like a great piece of software, and we don't have limitless budgets to buy every piece of software on the planet. And so that's why I love AlternativeTo, is you can take the name of something you're familiar with, or something that seems to have good ratings or have good functionality. You drop that into the search, and this will give you crowdsourced ratings, much like your 5-star ratings on Amazon, of here's a great resource, this has been helpful for me, and here's another option, and here's another. And so here's one for Mac users and Chrome Android users, and kind of all the way down the line. So you've got all these great examples for whatever the piece of software happens to be.
And it says here they have 30 alternatives to Auto Text Expander. So yeah, I'm quite sure. And I found it this way after taking Dr. Peterson's advice here. And I just found the Auto Text Expander extension. I use Chrome, so that works for me. But if you use Microsoft, I'm sure that there is something here for Microsoft users. So a huge thank you for those awesome tips. Thank you for AlternativeTo and Text Expander. And really what you're trying to tell us is personalize as much as you can, create and cultivate that relationship as much as you can. And folks, I can't say it enough. Dr. Peterson is working with doctoral students who, if I don't know what other student is motivated to get their education done, right? But they too need that relationship, that cultivation of a relationship. I think that's what you're telling us, right?
Absolutely. And there's one other item I forgot to mention, in addition to what you've shared with AlternativeTo and those pieces. On an iPhone or an iPad, there's a shortcut, and it's through settings, general, keyboards, and then there's some shortcuts that you can include that operate just like this, but that would be both on your phone or your iPad. I know many times if we're in an LMS, a learning management system, where we have to make some comments and you're doing that on the fly from one of those devices, you can use that as well. Obviously, that's completely free. You can have a sentence or paragraphs of information, and I use that regularly as well.
Because you're on the go, you have your phone all the time. And so that's a great piece of advice, folks. Definitely start using those shortcuts. Okay, so once we do this and we start to personalize with our students, how do we really self-reflect on this assessment? Right now, I can guarantee that teachers are formatively and summatively and not sure what they're doing as far as assessment because there's so much on their plates right now. Talk to us a little bit about your journey with assessment and reflection.
Sure. One of the things that I had located early on in my dissertation journey was finding some way to look at student satisfaction and these aspects of transactional distance, which sounds really complicated, but again, that's that psychological distance between a student and their instructor, student and their classmates, and their student and the content. And I found some tools online from other dissertations and other studies, which were questionnaires. Somewhat likely, agree, disagree, those kinds of Likert scale assessment tools. And so I reached out to those researchers and I asked them, I said, I love what you've done here. I emailed them. I'm a doctoral student at GCU. I would love to be able to use your assessment in my study, and gave them an idea of what I was looking at investigating. And they emailed me back. They were glad to see someone extending the work that they had done. And so I was able to take a very elegant, even 12-question questionnaire to be able to assess for a doctoral student, which could apply to a bachelor student or a high school student or beyond. How closely do they feel connected to their instructor, their classmates, and their course content, and their other sub-variables? But those were things that we typically don't assess. We're looking at grades and mastery and their ability to write effectively in a 5-paragraph essay, or their ability to complete a certain mathematical equation. But when we're looking at this dynamic of relationship, there are tools that help to assess that. And that was one of the exciting things as across the board, as I've helped students in every state in the union and overseas. I have students in Australia and Vietnam and Israel and Italy, to see how they're self-reflecting and what could I do to make the most of what's happening. We've shifted from completely in-person education. For a while, we were completely at a distance, some hybrid, moving back and back into the classroom, but finding out, what is the future of education? What do I want my students to learn? How are these students who are born with technological exposure, they're digital natives, how can I help them to assess the veracity of what they're reading? If they see something on a TikTok video, does that equate to a government website? And how can they look at the validity of what they're studying? And so looking at some of these tools that exist, I'm looking at, there's a limit to this, and maybe I want to engage and move this forward, and I want to look at some new avenues that no one has investigated yet. You can do that in the context of a doctoral program, and that's one of the key pieces of being part of where education is going. You're part of that as an educator already, but to look at beyond what we're doing, we know we don't have the solution for everything. And we know that there are some ways that are ostensibly better than others to implement in a class, but ways to assess that and measure that, and then help share that information and become the next theorist, the next researcher who's transforming education. That's possible when you do the work that you need to do in the midst of a doctoral program.
Oh, wow. Okay. You just got really deep on us, and I love that you did. But what you're actually saying, so some of us teachers that came on today might think, okay, you're talking about my students' assessment, how well they're gaining content. But actually, you're saying assess your own teaching practice. And the more you assess your own teaching practice through data collection and analysis, you will not only become a better practitioner, but your students will gain that rigor that we're looking for. Is that, it's kind of where you're going with that?
Absolutely. Where if students are more connected to their instructor, to their teacher, they're going to be more likely to devote discretionary effort towards a subject. That's no secret that students in classes where that's well known that on any campus, you can point and say, well, that's the science class that everybody wants to get into. Oh, you have so-and-so for science. Oh, you're so lucky. You have so-and-so for chemistry, or so-and-so for algebra. They recognize that. And those students their ability and their progress in those classes, and many times is head and shoulders above others when there's a disconnect and when the student doesn't have a connection to the teacher.
So what about time? I listen to this and I say, great. And I want to do some research. I have done some research, but I bet, Marnie, what do you think? Do you think teachers are going to say, I don't have time to do a doctoral degree? That's way too much.
Oh, absolutely. As a classroom teacher, I think you're just barely catching up with yesterday most of the time. But I kind of wanted to just go back to touch on, you were talking about some pretty high level, like you said, Corey, you went really deep at a moment there. I want to bring it back to the K-12 teacher. Some of the terminology we're really familiar with is social emotional learning, especially right now. I mean, that's really kind of coming to forefront. And so if I understand this right, when we talk about transactional distance, that is one aspect of social emotional learning, right? That building of relationships, is that tied together? And then also we have a lot of schools with PBIS programs too. I think that's also addressing this transactional distance, if I'm understanding.
You've got a wealth of ways to apply it. And in a K-12 setting, that relationship is just as important as it is at the bachelor's, master's, and at the doctoral level. When we enhance the relationship, we can enhance and make it much more fertile territory for us to be able to say, these students want to learn what I'm teaching. I can think of a practical example that comes from the K-12 environment. When I was in high school, I had a calculus teacher, and we were learning the area under a curve. I said, why would I ever want to? How am I ever going to use this? Why would this ever be important? She said, well, if you work as an engineer and want to get a high-paying job, you might be tasked with finding out the volume of a metal screw. And if you don't know how to do the area under a curve, that equation is going to be inaccessible for you. So this is, okay, I have a reason. And the statement of my teacher was, if you want to be able to get a high paying job in a fast moving career, they care about what I do beyond high school. Okay, so I was in it to win it, and I invested the time and learned how to do that. So those kinds of steps and connecting the dots for students can make a huge difference.
Wow. I think I just heard the relevance leads to rigor. That's what I heard. And without the relationship, you can't make it relevant, and then you can't really work towards the rigor. This is awesome. I have to say, Dr. Peterson, that I am working on a doctoral degree. I'm in my first dissertation course. This has been a journey. There's no question. And there are times where it's been really, really heavy, and I've been very busy at work and whatnot. But I will also say that the busier I am, it seems that the more I can get done. So I will tell you all from my own personal experience, I'm on the conveyor belt, as they say. I'm on the journey, and I highly recommend it because it's allowed me to be self-reflective of my own practice. And it's allowed me to see, where are we going next? I'm doing the doctoral degree in technology, the psychology of technology via learning via technology. What more can help a teacher grow her practice? So I want to say thank you, first of all, for allowing me the opportunity to go through the doctoral program with you. And I know that you've held my hand in every step of the way, so I appreciate that. But what about those people who are still like, yeah, whatever, that's Corey. I don't know if I can do it. Can you tell them just a quick blip of why getting your doctoral degree is not so intimidating?
I would share one of my classmates' experiences and their journey. So we all were pacing through the doctoral program at the same time. She was a principal at a special needs school. Her husband was a teacher and a high school football coach. So all those practices and all of that. They didn't have any children when they began the journey. She had a 2-year-old and a 1-week-old at the defense of her dissertation, which along the way, they decided to buy a dairy farm with 1,500 head of cattle and still own that. She was the first to graduate in our group that all began at the same time. And so when people ask me, and that's one of the blessings that I have, is to be able to help others who are contemplating, how could I work this into my day-to-day life? And typical doctoral programs, taking 3-4 classes at once, That's not the experience at GCU. It's a single class at a time, but being able to realistically look at where am I now? Where do I want to be 3-5 years from now? That QR code that's on the screen, if you scan that or click a link in the chat, that would allow you to book time to chat with me, just to discuss what are the things that I should be aware of pursuing an EDD, a PhD. How do I go from concept to execution for a dissertation and a research project that no one's ever written before? What are the support systems that exist, and how is that distinctly different at GCU? I'd be just delighted to have that conversation with you. And whether you pursue a doctoral degree through GCU or a local state school or wherever it is that's the best fit for you, that's just my encouragement to you, would be to reach that pinnacle. It won't be lost on your children, on your students, when they see you making inroads on a journey that puts you at 1 to 3% of the working U.S. population has a doctoral degree. It's an incredible journey, and I would go back and do it again. I had 11 and 16-year-old at the outset. They're 18 and 23 now. My wife's a nurse, works full-time. I worked full-time through the journey, taught on campus in addition to my full-time job, and worked on the doctorate. So it's possible to do. It does take sacrifice, but anything that's worth accomplishing is going to.
Well, I'm convinced, but you don't have to convince me, of course, because I'm already doing it. Folks, we want to know what's your takeaway. If it's something about doctoral degree, thinking maybe that could be for me, or if it's a tech tool that you learned today, or where are we headed in the next generation of student learning here. Folks, I see what Dr. Peterson talked about, social emotional learning, putting mental health at the top, and offering choice. I mean, Dr. Peterson's been teaching in-person and online classes for much longer than just a year and a half. And I don't think this is going away. So really appreciate your time today, Dr. Peterson, to share with us all of your wisdom. Transactional distance, I'm going to hold on to that. So feel free to share your takeaway. And I know that between Marnie and myself, the more projects that we come across with K-12 and the outreach that we do, all the research that we are privy to here at Grand Canyon University really helps us support teachers in what they do even more. So a huge shout out and a big thank you to you, Dr. Peterson. I want to also allow individuals to know that we're going to be looking towards the summer, and our topic for May is less is more. We're going to transition our Wednesday webinar to an online format. You'll be able to find a great topic every single month on our YouTube channel. So please make a note of that YouTube channel, and we will make sure to get you the trending topic of the month, but not just trending, what the research says. As Dr. Peterson talked about, it's about original research. What is the university coming out with? What are our doctoral students producing that we need to look at? Where is Zoom going next? Where is Microsoft Teams? How is hybrid instruction going to change us and make us better? Because if you don't research it, right, Dr. Peterson, we don't know. We don't know. We don't do anything lightly around here. We are here to empower, educate, and inspire you, our community, so that you take action to fulfill your purpose and to serve others. So please go on out, take all of the tips, tools, support that we've given you today, and empower your students to fulfill that purpose. We thank you for being here with us today. And if you have to jump off, don't forget to take Dr. Peterson's information with you. You can have a conversation with him. What I love about GCU is that it's actually, I don't feel intimidated at all. I feel like they just want you to become a student on your journey, wherever that journey might take you. So please don't hesitate to scan that QR code and make sure to reach out to Dr. Peterson. You to fill out our evaluation to let us know how we're doing and what topics you want to see on these webinars in the future that will be housed on our YouTube channel, that you will have fresh content monthly.